Welcome back. So in the first two lectures, we've talked about normal development. So we're going to get a little bit more into abnormal development. We have a lot of videos, especially with this lecture, so to kind of give you a sense of it. And also we'll get talking about older adults in the next video. So again, up until now, we've discussed primarily normal development, but also there are genetic influences on development. So today we're going to get a bit more into abnormal development and also the role that environment plays. So the book says that environmental factors can limit brain development. And on one hand, this is true, but it's also a little bit harsh, I think. Think of it like this. Each one of us has an intelligence range we can achieve based upon our genetics. From there, our environment determines where we fall on the continuum. If you have a strong, supportive environment, then you're likely to fall on the higher side of the range. On the other hand, if you have a really strong genes but a weak environment, you will likely be on the lower end of the spectrum, but you will still likely score in the average range because of your genetics. Now, with that said, there are certainly times when environmental events are so severe that they lead to brain damage. One of these are brain damage that, of course, affects cognition. So one of these is hypoxia. So hypoxia is the transient lack of oxygen to the brain at birth. So the brain has almost no reserves of glucose or oxygen. So even very short periods of deprivation can cause neuronal death. This is why when someone can't breathe, it's such an emergency, because there just isn't that much time before you start seeing cell death. So children's development can be affected certainly by having the air cut off during this time, because it can lead to the death of neurons. Also, children's development can be affected by the mother's health. Undernourished mothers may have underweight children who also suffer from other brain abnormalities. Also, exposure to teratogens can lead to birth defects, and certain viruses and drugs can also have serious effects on the developing fetus. So, behavioral teratology is the study of impairments in behavior that are produced by embryonic or fetal exposure to toxic substances. One of the best studied ones of these is fetal alcohol syndrome, which is a disorder that includes intellectual disability as well as characteristic facial abnormalities. So it is a result of children who are exposed to too much alcohol during development. And as you likely know, the mother's placenta serves as a barrier, which is why, for instance, the mother and child can have different blood types. So you have this barrier in between the two circulatory systems. However, certain substances can cross the placenta, and those that are, and some of those can be teratogenic, and alcohol is one of these. So, fetal alcohol syndrome is unfortunately very common. As you can see, 40% of children born to alcoholic mothers actually have FAS, so it's a big deal. It's actually the leading known cause of intellectual disability in the Western world. So, very big deal. It's something we see a lot of. There are many neurological problems that you can see as a consequence to this. So, as you can see in the CT scans, one of the most dramatic problems is that children with FAS may lack a corpus callosum. So, it can also lead to malformed brain structures throughout the brain, and the effects really depend on what areas are affected. However, common effects include poor memory, attention deficits, impulsive behavior, and poor cause and effect reasoning. So I have a brief video to show you just to give you a better sense of FAS and its effects.
We started seeing a lot of hyperactivity and emotionality. So we started getting a little concerned. When we first saw the developmental pediatrician, he suspected that there was an underlying syndrome due to fetal alcohol exposure. A diagnosis gives you some validation. We can say this is a disability that is a result of a birth defect. Living with a child with fetal alcohol syndrome is like living with the constant anticipation of a hurricane. Over time, you understand on so many different levels how this impacts not only your child, but your family. It's very hard to be a sibling of a child with fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. It's hard as a parent not to put this burden on your typical kid because it's like you want to say, you're the easy one, don't act out. We know there is no magic bullet. There is no one thing that is going to change everything. Having some OT and speech and physical therapy certainly helped. And you want to try to teach social skills to your child. But I think the intervention that I am most excited about is that we obtained a service dog. Ayal has an unconditional companion. One of the things we've learned as parents is that you want to try to create external supports for your child so that they can feel successful in any environment possible. The earlier you have a diagnosis, you can start intervention. If you see some behaviors in your kids that might look like what I'm describing, you certainly would want to make sure that you have a pediatrician examine your child. And if you're not hearing things that feel intuitively like they're answering your questions or your concerns, that you go to some sort of specialist, either a child neurologist or a developmental pediatrician. You have to look at this in the face so that you can help your child. I think it's important to tell the truth, to talk about what this is, and not to be ashamed, because if you're going to teach your child to be an advocate for themselves, you have to say, this is my kid. Part of my kid is that he has a disability, a profound disability. Every parent wants their child to be happy, and certainly that's what we want for Ayal. I think finding happiness within the context of this disability is going to depend a lot on Ayal feeling safe. Because he's so vulnerable, it is going to be our lifelong job to keep him protected and safe. There are ports in the storm. You just have to look for them.
So hopefully that video helps give you a little bit better of an idea of what FAS looks like and some of the difficulties you see with FAS. Genetic mutations can also lead to abnormal development and cognitive deficits. A genetic mutation is a change in the nucleotide sequence of a gene that results in unfaithful replication. Even small differences can have substantial effects. For example, with Down syndrome, the individual inherits an extra chromosome 21. Down syndrome is the most common chromosome abnormality in humans, and it appears to be strongly associated with the age of the mother. For instance, approximately 1 in every 700 babies is born with Down syndrome, but for mothers aged 45 or older, the chance of having a child with Down syndrome is 1 in 40. Which is important for us to keep in mind because so many of our careers make us push back when we're going to start a family. Down syndrome results in cognitive ability problems, with IQ scores being around 50. And just for reference, the cutoff for developmental disabilities, or what we used to call mental retardation, is typically having an IQ score below 70. So below 50 or 50 or around there is pretty low. So with that, many individuals with Down syndrome have severe intellectual disabilities. So the the child on the left you see is a child with Down syndrome. Fragile X syndrome is a genetic syndrome that is the most widespread single-gene cause of autism, and it's often a cause of mental retardation among boys. It gets its name because the end of the long arm of the X chromosome is fragile and is prone to breaking. And because of this, the DNA there are unstable. One sign of this condition are facial abnormalities, including an elongated face, large prominent ears, and a prominent chin. Individuals with Fragile X may present anywhere on the continuum of learning disabilities, including having normal intelligence, though that's rare. The average IQ of boys with this condition is 40, so again, pretty low. Females are less affected and typically have an IQ in the normal or borderline range due to having a second X chromosome that makes up for the deficiency. Common cognitive problems include short-term memory and working memory problems, executive function difficulty, and problems with visual memory and visual relationships. The verbal abilities are usually spared. So now I have about a 7-minute video that I think is a good summary of Down syndrome that I want to show you.
My name is Adam Barda. I'm a family physician here in Austin, Texas, and I've been practicing for about 10 or 11 years here. My interest in Down syndrome developed when my second child was born with Down syndrome.
There's a lot of damage. Ooh, look.
Down syndrome is a condition that's changing in many ways. We're realizing that people with Down syndrome have immense potential in terms of being able to go to school, sometimes college, integrating into all aspects of society. And society in general is becoming more accepting of people with disabilities.
As a baby with Down syndrome grows, she will develop in the same pattern as a typical baby, just at a slower rate.
Strength, that's what they want, don't they?
Ants. Yeah, do you see?
As any parent of a toddler knows, being able to communicate is a big plus. Young children with Down syndrome can use sign language to communicate with their parents.
Do you want to go swimming?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I started signing with her when she was first born, and it took a really long time, which it usually does. But I just kept signing and signing, and then one day I was like, "Where's Ani?" And she goes, "Ani, Ani," and I went, "Oh my gosh!" That was her first sign. Was her big sister's name. I stopped counting, but she probably has well over 300. Signs. And now the signing has kind of diminished, and it's more, she's just picked up more of just, speaking.
Hey, what color is this? There.
White.
It's white. What's that?
S.
The S? What's this?
A.
A.
E.
E.
It's a
Sabine.
As children with Down syndrome grow older, they often start playing sports. They can join leagues with typical children, or children with special needs, or compete in the Special Olympics.
One of Pilar's favorite things to do is swim. She can swim underwater, she swims on top, free stroke, breaststroke. We're working on floating on her back, which she doesn't like to do. We started swimming when she was about 2 years old, and she's really done well.
Pilar, do you like to swim?
Yeah.
Come on.
Awesome. Awesome.
Jack, which hero did you read about?
Sam Houston.
Sam Houston. Okay, we're ready to learn about Sam Houston.
Hi, my name is Houston.
Children with Down syndrome learn to read, write, do math, and make friends at school.
In 1823, I was elected to the House of Representatives. I helped write the Texas Constitution.
They are educated in regular classrooms, special education classrooms, or a combination of both. And like everyone else, they learn Texas history in the 4th grade. By the time they are in their teens, many people with Down syndrome have found their own interests: drama, dance, music, their peers, and yes, even gossiping about boys.
We usually talk about cute boys. A lot.
No. She's not dating for a while.
You're weird.
I know.
Adults with Down syndrome are part of their community. Many work part-time or full-time. They build friendships, pursue their interests, and live at home or independently with support, or in group settings.
See you, Don. Thank you. Good meeting.
Dinner time for a family with a child with Down syndrome is typical. Everybody has something to say.
Hey, who's ready to say a blessing?
I'm not ready. I'm not ready.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah, please. Like.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the kids are wondering about dessert.
How about Casey?
This is a typical post-dinner evening. Yep. Hang out, watch a dance show, read some books, get ready for bed. That's pretty much our evening life.
Lost his father.
Sibling relationships are close and loving, as brothers and sisters fight and play together. Research shows that siblings of children with Down syndrome grow to be more compassionate and tolerant adults than siblings of typical children.
My brother Jackson has changed my view on other people and how I perceive them. I'm more sensitive towards people with special needs. Next year, I'm going to be a teacher's aide for a special skills class for kids in my grade with Down syndrome and autism and things. I love spending time with him, playing with him, and he's become like a very important part of my life.
You really have to either get to know people or get in touch with a local organization. You know, let them see a person with Down syndrome so that they can make a good decision for themselves, not out of fear and not out of past stereotypes of what people used to be capable of with Down syndrome, but in 2008, it's a whole different ballgame.
I've been an advocate for people with disabilities. I went to Washington and to be on a task force for people with disabilities. The purpose really was try and get people with disabilities into the workforce. I feel strongly about this because they should be included. I do consider this a big honor today. I know some people think it's too hard for a person who has a disability. They need to see beyond the disability and who the person really is. If you look at me, I don't give up. And I never have.
So hopefully that gives you a little bit better of an idea of Down syndrome. As you could tell, it was taped in Texas. Not everyone gets Texas history in the 4th grade, but Texas is its whole different world. But it gives you a sense of what it's like to have a child with Down syndrome, and also what an individual with Down syndrome is capable of doing, which is also very important to know about. So PKU. PKU is a recessive hereditary disorder of protein metabolism that in the past commonly resulted in intellectual disability. The deficit is an absence of an enzyme that's necessary to metabolize phenylalanine, which is an amino acid that is present in many foods. As a result, the brain gets damaged because of a buildup of it, and it is toxic. It's pretty rare since it's recessive. Only about 1 in every 10,000 births is affected, but about 1 in every 100 people carry the gene. However, PKU can be detected early in life by a blood test, and it's usually part of the newborn screening panel. When it's detected, dietary modifications can be made to protect a person from the negative effects. However, the problem is there are a lot of restrictions, including meat, chicken, fish, eggs, nuts, cheese, legumes, and artificial sweeteners. So it really limits what an individual is able to eat. As we've discussed some previously, in addition to the environment, experience is also very important in the development of the brain. One of the places that is most clearly seen is amblyopia, which is an impairment in vision in one eye. It can be caused by the eye being misaligned or some problem with the retina, optic tract, etc. It's a good example of the impact of experience because if it's left untreated, by the time the child reaches the age of 7, the bad eye will become nearly completely suppressed by the brain. If the problem is caught and fixed early in childhood, then the images will fuse together as normal, and the child will have average depth perception. However, if it's not corrected until later, it may be too late to restore acute vision in the weak eye, leading to deficits in depth perception. This is also known as ocular dominance in the non-affective good eye. So the good eye has ocular dominance. Given this, there appears to be a sensitive period for vision, much like there is with language, where after that point, even if vision is restored, the abnormal brain development due to the lack of experience results in deficits. So as we see here, it's not just genes, but also environment. Much like we saw with fetal alcohol, environment can also lead to differences, problems in development. Attention deficit disorder is a syndrome of distractibility, impulsiveness, and hyperactivity that in children interferes with school performance. It is estimated that 5% of children meet criteria for ADHD. There are a few important criteria that we look for with diagnosing ADHD. First, the symptoms must be present prior to age 7. Second, you must show impairment in more than one domain. So if you only have problems at home or only at school, it isn't ADHD, but it may be something else like anxiety. ADHD evaluations are both complex and also big business for psychologists, but they are tricky. What we're looking for is essentially a discrepancy between someone's aptitude and their ability. So essentially, we're looking at a difference between what someone is capable of and how they're actually performing. There do seem to be some real significant differences in the brains of individuals with ADHD and those who do not have the disorder. Children with ADHD have brain volumes that are 3 to 4% smaller than those who do not have the disorder. The difference is most prominent, though, in the prefrontal cortex, which is thought to play a role in inhibiting behavior. There are also differences in the cerebellum. Children with ADHD also seem to have less signaling in the dopamine reward pathways. While stimulants are commonly used, behavioral interventions have also been shown to be effective in treating ADHD, so stimulants aren't the only answer. Autism is a disorder that's become much more known over the last 10 years or so. It's a disorder that arises during childhood and is characterized by social withdrawal and perseverative behaviors. It is thought that about 1 to 2 children for every 1,000 meet criteria for autism, though sometimes you see much higher estimates on TV ads. Honestly, it depends on how you define autism, since the disorder is often considered to be a spectrum. The telltale sign of autism is when a normally developing child starts regressing or losing language skills and also withdrawing from family interaction. These children may or may not have cognitive deficits, but they usually engage in perseverative or repeated behaviors. They often actively avoid making eye contact with other people and have difficulty judging others' thoughts and feelings. As with ADHD, there are a few notable structural differences in the brain, especially the amygdala, which appears to be overactive when gazing at faces. Since the amygdala is related with fear, one theory is that children with autism may find looking at faces aversive and therefore avoid eye contact. Applied behavior analysis, previously known as behavioral modification, is the preferred treatment for autism spectrum disorders. It is used to teach basic social skills as well as to reduce inappropriate behaviors. And the last disorder we'll talk about in this video is Asperger's syndrome. So Asperger's syndrome is sometimes thought of as a high-functioning autism. It's a syndrome characterized by difficulties with social cognitive processing, usually accompanied by normal language skills. Thus, here you still have difficulties with interpreting emotions and facial expressions, but you don't see the language deficits that you typically have with autism. You will see problems with social interactions along with repetitive behaviors. To date, the cause of autism in Asperger's is still unknown. Some have hypothesized that there's a link between vaccines and the syndromes, but the research showing that has been discredited. What we know is that the diagnoses are being given much more frequently than they used to. However, this could be due to providers and parents becoming more aware of the disorder and may not actually indicate an increase in prevalence.